Welcome to If These Walls Could Talk. I'm your host and super CEO, Lindsay Liu. Joining me today is Ran Fridman. Ran is a real estate entrepreneur combining decades of experience in technology, hospitality, and property management. As the owner of Fridman Properties Family, he has grown his management company through investments and with other landlords from Chicago to broader Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. Today, Ran is here to share his origin story, taking us across continents to managing his very first properties in Asia. Welcome, Ran.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I'm originally from Ukraine. I started and fall in love with hospitality and property management more than 20 years ago when I was living in Thailand. I opened my first bed and breakfast before even Airbnb existed because I speak several languages. So we had bed and breakfast, people stay with us. We had a cafe. So people around the world came and staying with us. Then I did property management in China for 8 years, China, Hong Kong, and Philippines. And now we're doing property management here in the United States, almost 10 years. We do management in 3 states, as you mentioned, Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. We bought our first property. It was an interesting story. So we bought our first property in south side of Chicago, and it was foreclosure, $15,000 back almost 9 years ago. Yeah. So my wife was worried because it was the area so-so. But I told my wife, it's 3 blocks from University of Chicago. It's one of the top universities in US. I'm sure the area will change. And that's what happened. We bought it for $15,000. Nobody believes me, but it's 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. We bought it for $15,000. We put another $20,000 in rehab, and we started Airbnb, and we covered this in 1.5 years. So whatever we invested, we covered in 1.5 years. Then the owners in the same building started to approach me and ask, Ran, we see so many people coming. What are you doing? I said, we started Airbnb and it's going successfully. So the investors, one is a doctor, another is an attorney, and the third one is a fireman. And he said, can you manage our properties? I say, yes, of course. And that's how the management company started in the United States. And it was before COVID. So what we did is we subleased the properties. We made an agreement with the owners, and we connected all the 4 apartments and all the big families, sport groups that were coming in Chicago. They were staying with us. So we took kind of like in Chicago monopoly, like people 20 plus that want to stay in one place. We were like in Chicago, one of the few places where they can stay under one roof. So we were making like 15-20 grand per month from those 4 apartments. And that's how we started in management. And then people, word of mouth, people started to ask, hey, can you manage our property? And we started to buy with my wife also investment properties. Now we own with my wife in 3 states as well. We own in Michigan City, Indiana. We own properties, multi-units in south side of Chicago. And we started to invest and manage in Milwaukee, Wisconsin as well.
That's incredible. I have a lot of questions for you. Okay, the first one I'm going to start with is Airbnb and short-term rentals. I have some of that in my portfolio. I will say they are the most challenging tenants you can run into because they're kind of in between, right? They are expecting all of the things of a hotel, but it's not really a hotel. Do you still manage short-term rentals today?
We do midterm. So after the COVID hit, I had the responsibility for my properties and properties we own to continue generating income. So we quickly switched to midterm, meaning travel nurses, travel professionals, contractors, hospital staff, and so on. And it's been very successful for us. It's not a short term. It's a little bit less money, but it's also much less headache than Airbnb.
That is true. I'm sure you have some Airbnb nightmare stories
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well to share.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And we actually during the when we were doing Airbnb, I was doing consulting. I'm still doing consulting, and I was teaching for people who wants to start Airbnb how to use technology. Like we use a lot of upsales, like selling early check-in, late checkout, affiliated program with all the tours providers in Chicago and activities experience. So it's not just bed and overnight stay. We were making money on everything, all the activities, late checkouts, early check-ins, and so on.
That's great. Optimizing on all parts of the experience. Um, what about, okay, the jump from you were last managing, it sounds like in China, is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Properties there before you came to the US. What are some of the main differences in property management, looking at a market like China versus the US?
Sure. Yeah. So when we came to China almost like 19 years ago, uh, the challenge was that for expats, for foreigners who were coming to China for work or study Mandarin, it was no service apartment. It was no like Airbnbs. And we are the one who started this in Shanghai. We used to live 5 years in Shanghai. So we made an agreement with the landlords, subleases their apartments, and we started to service apartment business, like for people who come anywhere from 3 months to 6 months. First, it was challenge to get enough apartments because I hired people to clean it and like do maintenance. But then it grew up pretty quickly because it was no much competition. We were the first one who started it.
So basically Airbnb arbitrage before
Exactly.
it was known as that.
Yes, yes. Before it started,
Okay.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Amazing. So then you came to Chicago, and it sounds like you just had a gut feeling about an area. Or was there any financial analysis that went into betting in this area for your
Yeah,
first property?
for me, it was a no-brainer. If it's like 3 blocks from University of Chicago, the university itself must do something with the area. So that's why I told my wife, like 15 grand, like it's not a lot of, it's still money, but it's not a lot of money for 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom. So I told her that let's buy it, let's rehab it and see what's happened. And now it's a Woodlawn. It's a 64 block on Woodlawn. Now it's a nice area. Students live there. Medical staff from university lives there. We almost always full. This apartment always rented. Plus a couple blocks from their Obama Library is building. So once it's open, the value even will go more.
Amazing. So the lesson there I'm getting is you got to play the long game. Obviously, real estate is a long game, right?
Yep.
But you had a very good plan for how to make it worthwhile in the short term as well.
Exactly, exactly. And that's how we started also to buy in Michigan City, Indiana. How I found out and why we started to buy there is I like to study transportation and development plans of the cities. So it's a public information. You can go and see it. So as soon as I found out that it will be a speed metro train from Michigan City to downtown Chicago, I told my wife, we need to invest and we
We
started to
got to get in on
investing
it.
there
Okay.
exactly before everyone else. Yeah, so we started, yeah, before. So we started to buy multi-units there, and then for investors that we manage for them in other state and also south side of Chicago, I told them, hey guys, that's the right time to invest in Michigan City.
Interesting. I want to get on this list of people that you're giving the hot tips to.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So
So, okay,
usually,
so,
yeah, just like study development plan, how the roads will be, how the trains will
hmm
be developing, and so on.
hmm So you started this, it sounds like you organically got into the fee-based property management business, and now you have a hybrid of managing your own and that on behalf of other investors that you work with. Do you manage those properties any differently? How do you kind of balance the two different portfolios?
Yeah, so my philosophy through life is whatever works for me and whatever I experience on my own properties, that's what I suggest to other investors. So basically, I'm testing everything first on myself, on my properties, and only then I suggest investor to do the same.
You take on the risk first. You're like, let me
Exactly.
experiment. And then you
Yeah.
get not the other way around. Okay, that's good to know.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I always think that, folks that have their own stake, right, skin in the game, in whatever, I mean, I think this goes broadly as well, not just within real estate, but, more broadly, means that you're going to treat it with a different level of care. You're going to take a different mindset around it because you're really in the shoes of your customer as well.
Exactly. And that's why we call ourselves investor friendly property management, because we investors with my wife as well. And I was brought up by my parents and grandparents. Very simple. Treat the people the same way you want to be treated. That's my philosophy. It's working for years, and I don't plan to change anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so going back in time, would you do anything any differently?
You know what? As soon as I came to United States, I knew I want to do real estate. I would start earlier, like right away. We waited like a couple years, like to get the feet in the ground, get kids to school, and but I would start it earlier, and I would start my property management as well earlier.
Okay, so don't delay. I mean, isn't that the classic real estate story? You're always kicking yourself for not taking that one investment or doing something earlier. You're
Exactly.
like, I knew, but hindsight is 2020, right?
Yeah, but we got lucky with the first investment, 15 grand for closure, and then I'm
Yeah.
very careful about buying. So we usually, if we check our portfolio, we buying at very good price, and most of it is foreclosures. And we do rehab because I'm originally, as I mentioned, from Ukraine, and now there is a lot of people from Ukraine come and they do construction and handyman work. So we have teams that do both construction and handyman work.
Okay, great. And that's great that you can really kind of build a community of people that can help across all of the different needs of the properties as well. So you mentioned that when you came over to the US, you knew you wanted to do real estate. Why?
Yeah. I like the idea, and that's what I did in China and Thailand as well. I love the idea of passive income. Like I educate my kids. I have two daughters, and I educate them from the like when they're small. That hey guys, it's good that you're planning to go to university to get a degree, but in the same time, you need to build your wealth through real estate. And they know everything. I talk home with my wife, and they know everything what I'm doing. So all the softwares, like once a week, they come to the office to help me out, like send notices or office work. I want them to know what we're doing.
Amazing. Um, it's that book, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Exactly. Yeah,
All
exactly.
about, yep, yep. Although, would you actually say real estate is passive income?
Yeah, it's a lot of work, but
It's
eventually,
not so passive.
eventually, like some of our properties already paid off.
hmm
So
hmm
eventually with time you paying this off. Plus, I have my own property management company. I have 24-hour managers, handymans. We have a booking manager that do all the accounting for us, and so it took us time, money. I invested a lot of time, money in this property management to build the system. I think any kind of business need a system. So it took me time and money to build the system what we have now. And
Yeah,
my
yeah.
background, yeah, but my background is IT. I automate a lot of stuff, and I teach investors and landlords to automate stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bread and butter of this industry is process, right? So
Exactly.
getting the systems in place is the only way you can really make it profitable and you can scale as well. So it
Exactly.
sounds like, get it on autopilot, get it on rinse and repeat. You figured out a system that works for you there. So maybe it is a little bit more passive than some folks say.
Yeah, and that's what I'm teaching as well. I have a consulting. People contact me for consulting, how to automate their business. So that's what I do. I give like a small example. For all the leads that coming from major 20 website like Zillow, Trulia, everything, all the response get automatically. Like people want response right away, and we automated
hmm
it. All the leads that coming in, they get automatically right away email and text message with the next step and actions they need to take.
Yep. Yep. I know we've talked at length about the automations and the opportunities for technology. So I think it's great to hear for other listeners, right, on kind of how some property managers and investors are seeing the gains from that. Well, thank you so much for sharing this story with us today. If people want to
Sure.
learn more, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes, we will put in probably in description of podcast or video, but they can Google Fridman Properties Family because we family-owned companies. That's why it's Fridman Properties Family, and Fridman with the I, not IE. Fridman Properties Family.
Perfect. All right. We will get that in the show notes as well. So thank you so much again for joining us. And that's today's episode of If These Walls Could Talk. Super is the AI-powered communication and workflow tool for property managers. To learn more about Super, visit us at www.hiresuper.com. To share a story you have for a future episode, email us at hello@hiresuper.com.